Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 3 of the SimDem Today podcast. I'm your host, Tripod, and we have our temporary co host, Lyoko. Say hi to the chat, Lyoko.
Hello.
Yeah, I just did a podcast episode with him. Big surprise, I do multiple ones in a day. And today, our special guest is Speaker of the Senate, MyPenJustBroke. Say hi to the chat.
What's up, y'all? How you doing?
Okay, MyPen, take this time to introduce yourself, tell them what you do, who you are, all that kind of stuff.
Hey guys, my name is My Pen Just Broke. I enjoy long walks on the beach and climbing. No, this isn't a dating app. My bad. I'm currently the Speaker of the Senate for the 135th Senate, and I'm I like to do legislative stuff. I guess. I mean, I've been elected 3 times, but anyway, I've been a senator for 3 terms. I'm the party leader of the New People's Party, and I just like representing people, I've proposed or sponsored 16 bills so far, and I like the economy. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. So before you came on the podcast, you said you were sleep deprived. How long have you been up?
Honestly, I got a good little 2.5 hour nap at around like 5:30 this morning. So, um, if we take out that nap, probably about, I would say, solid 36 hours.
Oh, that's beautiful. But you know, our generation, well, not our generation, you're so much older than me. Uh, people
Totally.
today, people today, we thrive on that 2.5 hour nap.
Yeah, it's really just rejuvenating.
Yeah, of course. Like it's 1:10 in the morning for me right now, and I gotta be up in the morning to take my driver's test.
Central Time pills, let's go.
Yeah, whatever. Get out of here.
Oof. So before we continue, let's talk about today's sponsor. From Ferris, do you have a historian's eye and a determination to keep history alive? The National Archives is honored to introduce the Law Hunt program, where your enthusiasm for history and governance can pay 25 Tau per law or bill passed within the past 3 days that you present to us. Your effort builds a wiser and more open society, document by document. That really aged like milk considering he just said he's finna step down. Oh wait, no, I'm talking about White Tommy. Never mind.
I was gonna say, dude, it was awfully topical considering my takes on the economy and Tao that I mentioned, but I think the sponsor for ours was the People's Bank after I just finished like completely shitting on the Tao and the economy.
Oof.
Oh, that's hilarious. The funny thing is, um, Olive and I both started the People's Bank. Um, when Olive filed for an IPO on the SimDem stock exchange, they didn't list me as an owner, and I got pressed for like a solid 5 seconds. But then I realized they've done 99% of the work on that. So good on them.
Oh, nice, nice.
Did
Oh,
they
fun
did they
fact.
did they Zuckerberg you out of the bank?
To be fair, I didn't really do anything, so
You the
it,
Zuckerberg.
That's crazy.
fair enough.
By the way, Ferris was the one who got the sponsorship for the People's Bank. You're welcome.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. I don't see any of that money, but fair enough. But anyway, yeah. Do you have any questions for me?
Of course I do, or else this wouldn't be a podcast.
You're so right.
Let's go back to that long walks on the beach. What else do you like to do?
I like to write poetry and do photography mostly. I love just being creative. That's part of why I really like legal writing. Um, at least for me, I get to be creative, solve problems, and I can think on the fly pretty well. So I can kind of retrofit systems into each other. And I don't know. I just like to use different thought processes with poetry, for example, um, and write, use imagery, and yeah, that and photography. Really love it. Also, like hanging with friends. Real life is important, and just my advice to anyone who's chronically online on SimDem like I am is have at least some sense of a balance between your online life, school, and your actual friends in real life. Not to say there are people here who are not actual friends by any means. I think Bonk and Matt Cheney, the Treasury Secretary, are some of my closest friends on here. And they're good friends no matter what. They're honest with me and they're everything a friend can be, except, be within arm's reach sometimes. So just strike a balance, as with anything.
Nice, nice. And and since he's on SimDem, ladies, he's single.
Ah, yes, that is true. That is true.
So kind of on that point, my pen. So I mean, so like today, Pat posted a little like a guide to having that work-life balance, I guess if you would say. Well, did you have any thoughts on that? Like, did you have anything to add to it? Any criticisms of it?
So I'm not gonna lie, I haven't read it yet. It's on my quote unquote reading list. But um, could I just ask for a little synopsis?
Yeah, I mean, he basically went through and it kind of reiterated a lot of the same points you did, and then he kind of outlined a little bit about what his daily exposure to SimDem looks like. Where he says, once an hour he'll spend a minute or two just making sure he didn't have any pings, and he'll spend 20 minutes looking at bills and voting on bills, and he'll spend 30 minutes writing stuff and things like that, and where it comes out to be about 30 minutes to an hour a day he spends on SimDem at the most. And he says that that's kind of how he fits it into his busy life to make sure he doesn't get too drawn into it to where he starts neglecting things in his real life.
Well, I mean, I applaud Pat for having that amount of discipline. I don't. Um, I probably spend 2 to 3 hours on Syndem a day, which is not healthy. I'll say that right now. That's part of why I'm retiring from the Senate after this term, just to kind of refocus what I'm doing and kind of keeping my priorities straight. But the biggest thing that I can tell, I guess, people in conjunction with Pat's statement and kind of guide to a SimDem real life balance is something my dad told me when I was young, and it's always stuck with me. Everything is good in moderation. Now, obviously, there are exceptions. Don't do Fent or anything of the sort, right? But just everything usually is good within moderation. For example, when I joined SimDem, I had nothing really going on. I had no real social exposure. It was the day before I left for a study abroad trip that I would be on in like for 14 days. And I was just in my room, tired, and I needed to talk to people. And I really liked politics. I hadn't been as involved as I'd like to have been for a while. And so I joined after the Trolligarch video and decided, hey, let's see what happens. And for a few days, I was pretty good about it. Like, it was a really fun thing to do just while I was dicking around in Costa Rica. But then I kind of went off the deep end and became a senator, and that involves a much higher time investment. So you can see how involved I've been, and as well as the benefits of being moderative of yourself.
Well, not just senator. I mean, you're the Speaker of the Senate now. I mean, that's you're the big dog in charge of the legislative branch. I mean,
Guys,
did
I'm
you
the deep
ever?
state. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, I mean, jokes about the NPP deep state aside, because I made the joke when I was in the SBQR about that. But I mean, did you ever expect, especially when you first joined, at what point did you even realize that you might even have a shot at being the speaker?
I I don't ever think I did, honestly. I think the I say that at some point I obviously had to because obviously I won. But I think the real realization came when Pat said he's done being speaker at the end of the 134th and when Stalin lost in the first election for the 135th. Um, we had formed a TLC for the creative presidential, just in time for the creative presidential run. And this was the first Senate election that we had a coalition backing on that we could kind of stand, you know? And so we were like, okay, well, let's just see what happens with this. And we think all of our incumbent senators for NPP were just going to kind of glide in. But I think the inactivity curve kind of hit. And so we got less votes than we wanted. I still got in, Pat still got in, kind of just direct votes. And then Stalin didn't make it. And I was like, okay, well, shit. Like the guy I was going to support for speaker is not going to be in the Senate in time for a speaker vote. And so I looked at Pat just metaphorically and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that shit." And so I was like, "Okay, guys, let me like throw my hat in the ring." And as soon as the Senate votes kind of came out and were certified, I started whipping, and that's when I realized I could actually make this work.
Oh, nice, nice. And I want to go back to the TLC. Honestly, personal opinion, I feel kind of cheated by them because back when everyone was part of the STPB, the SimDem Progressive Bloc, for those who don't know, I, I I was going to be endorsed by former president I made because I was their VP. It felt only natural that it succeed them, right? Then the whole drama went on. The USL and the MPP left the block. The block pretty much dissolved. What are your thoughts on the progressive bloc dissolving?
Well, let me give you a timeline that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. Just for those who may not know or weren't involved in those conversations, we joined the SimDem Progressive Bloc when we were still a small fledgling party. Uh, it was in the era of NPP where I was still the founding chief policy director, and so it was within 4 or 5 days of party creation at that point, maybe January 5th of this year, and we're like, okay, well, we're making a coalition with newer parties. This is a natural move, right?
Hmm.
We're kind of on the center left side, and progressive bloc, yeah, we can stomach that bet. Then, when the first or second round of negotiations started kicking off, um, one or two of our delegates to the SDBB kind of got a bit more loose with their words than I necessarily wanted them to be. And, or you can't control people, but I don't know. You
Really?
can control who you send. But anyway,
If you allow
it,
me to elaborate on that, yeah, it quickly devolved to chaos. I was the leader of the Citizens Progress Party at the time, and I looked to, I think either you or Chirpy. I'm like, nope, fuck this, I'm out, and y'all just followed suit until Mercy DM'd me with an apology and asked me to rejoin, and I'm like, guess I'm doing this again. But again, it quickly devolved into chaos, and it got to the point where I had everybody quiet, and they could only raise their hands to speak.
yeah, well, I'll tell you the funny thing. Mercy apologized to y'all, but Lucas was the point guy who got us back in the STBB. And it was after that second devolution of just kind of it got really out of hand, and I just really wasn't feeling it with some of the characters involved. Respect them as people, but didn't appreciate some unprofessional behavior going on. That I decided to resign as chief policy director, and some of our other exec members had planned to resign as well. So that's really when we had to put our party constitution to the test and start electing our first elected government. Well, we did that, and then we stayed with the SDPB for a little bit until after the actually, I think probably the Wednesday before the end of you and I made second term, and we were kind of in talks with TLC, and we were like, we're not going to dual play this. It's not fair to anyone involved. We're not going to be a double agent between like coalitions or blocks or whatever. And we just formed the TLC in the third government of ours, and we left SDPB.
Nice, nice.
Um,
Uh, Question. So
yes.
the Liberty Coalition at its founding was comprised of three parties: the United Socialist League, you guys, and the Lemon Party. Two of those parties were already in the Progressive Bloc. Was there a reason? Were there any talks to the beginning about the Lemon Party joining the Progressive Bloc?
It's kind of funny, honestly. U USL, NPP, and LP kind of really coalesced together. It was kind of a meeting of the minds moment, honestly. And it really wasn't a special lobby to get LP in or not, to get USL in or not, to get us in or not. We were kind of all on the same page. Um, and the only real thing we had to kind of think about was, hey, the center wanted to join, and they ended up joining as the fourth party, and then we ratified our charter, and so the four founding parties came into TLC. Um, and I mean, it's been going ever since. There really has been no, yeah, or there really was no, hey, should we try to up our voting power and do the political calculus by letting another party in?
Nice, nice. I was just wondering because, like, back when I was basically head chair, because Mercy wasn't running it as much, I, I was shocked to find out that the whole block was falling apart, especially so close to my presidential campaign. This might be a bit of my personal feelings mixed into it, of course. But I just really wanted to know if anyone considered Lemon Party even joining the Progressive Bloc. Like, but I know you said the three parties just naturally coalesced. Y'all's policies are so similar.
Yeah, and if I'm being quite frank, I think the progressive bloc as a whole represented themselves much more left than we necessarily saw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course,
Uh,
of course.
and the the funny thing with SimDem is it is left leaning by nature, right? If we look at kind of a political axis, um, the MPP is kind of a moderate left wing party, dare I say, a center left wing party, but on the especially in U.S. politics, if I can give that a frame of reference, we're pretty left wing. But there's also a lot of the opposite happening with a lot of individualized party politics and party manifestos. So, I to go back to the question, LP wouldn't have joined the progressive bloc anyway. There was obviously the Unity Coalition in the 134th um, race, the presidential race, and that kind of devolved pretty quickly after the progressive bloc won.
Yeah.
But
I also want to point out that the Progressive Bloc's one of their main, how do I say it, tenets was they were very anti-lemon.
yeah,
That
So
was
I'm
their whole campaign.
so to kind of touch on what you said earlier, my pen about the progressive bloc being more left than you might have had a taste for, the party rather might have had a taste for, not you personally. Um, was it any surprise, just considering the makeup of the parties, that you have the United Socialist League, you have the QQQ in there. I mean, as controversial as they were and are still in the discussion in SimDem today.
We also
I mean,
had the short-lived SimDem Communist Party.
right, yes, the SCP, which I always thought was a funny acronym. I mean, were there ever any like internal talks in the NPP about like, all of these parties are kind of way left of us, but we're left wing, they're left wing, and then so maybe we can make it work. Was that kind of the thought process?
yeah, essentially. The ST, I keep calling it the ST because that's the only way I can enunciate D. But the SDPB was another meeting of the minds, but only in the sense that, hey, we're all left wing. Let's kind of like do something funny here and win an election. And we're all like, okay, cool. Even with all the internal drama, we all whipped well for each other, especially in like, what's it called? In presidential elections. At the end of the day, Tripod and IMIC was a good administration 2 terms in a row. So, I mean, we kept it going. Um, but at the end of the day, we we saw that our days in SDPB were numbered. Um, we didn't like a lot of the reactionary things we saw in there, and we just knew that at the end of the day, we love these people, but we're not going to be able to keep doing a formal alliance with everyone who was in the SDPB.
Of course, of course. And if we're gonna be frank, the QQQ is essentially dissolved. There is the Rose Party, but they're not really making as active of strides as the QQQ did. So I guess it could be safe to say that Liberty, Co- n- the Liberty Coalition is essentially the spiritual successor of the Progressive Bloc. Would you say?
I would not say that, actually. Um, there's a good amount of policy differences regarding the TLC and the progressive bloc. So I would respectfully disagree. For instance, there's a lot of, I don't know, from what I experienced in my time as a delegate to SDPB, it seemed like there was a lot of push by every single party for every other party to agree with each other's policies. And that's not a coalition, that's trying to assimilate every other party to yourself. And every party engaged in it, and selfishly, I think we did so less, but we pushed our policies in the name of, hey, this shit is weird. Let's throw our hat in the ring, I guess. Um, so let's contrast that real quick with TLC. I don't think we've had really many insane political disagreements necessarily because we understand kind of where we're all coming from and we're still able to have debates about it and come to a reasonable consensus. I really didn't have more than one conversation like that in SDPB. I'm not going to lie.
Nice, nice.
So,
Uh,
sorry. So, just one more point on it. So, it definitely seems like the TLC coalition seems to be more of a whereas the SDPB seemed to be more of a meeting of the left minds. The TLC coalition seems to be more of a meeting of the centrist or the moderates. Is
You
that
you
is that
could
is that
say
is that
that.
fair?
You could possibly say that, but again, centrism is a misnomer here. But
Yeah, sure.
even like notwithstanding that point, um, I would simply put it as Lemon, Center, NPP, and USL. They they had a goal that didn't align with SDPB, and as such, they just kind of did what was necessary to make things happen. Um, in in their favor or whatever, and it's worked.
nice, nice. So moving on from the whole TLC, well, kind of not, but we're gonna talk about something a little bit different. So it seems like you've had a positive interaction with Lucas when he tried to get the MPP to rejoin the TLC, but what are your thoughts on the whole Lucas situation? Him making that giant rant and then leaving the server.
Oh well, that's kind of a loaded question. I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of thoughts, but
We'd love to
I'll
hear him.
just say that I'll just say this. I respect Lucas as a politician, and I respect him as a person. Um, he's a human being, and I'm called to love him no matter what. But at the same time, I didn't appreciate a lot of his kind of more defensive and reactionary stances on a lot of things. And I don't know. There was a lot of hyperbole in there too. That being said, putting all of that aside, what I saw in his final messages in the Senate and everything else was somebody who felt hurt by SimDem. And he's a minor. His frontal lobe is still developing. Mine is too. And I feel like we could have had a bit more empathy for Lucas. Even though I didn't like his personality or attitude, I still feel like we could have handled the situation better.
So,
Of
I mean, to
course.
kind of ask about that, because I mean, obviously everybody has their own opinion on the whole situation. I mean, was it? And this is a question that because I kind of asked myself too, is was it tantamount to to the cyberbullying? Because obviously Lucas felt hurt by it, but was it cyberbullying or was it more of a consequence of his actions? Right? Was it like a reap what you sow kind of thing?
I would say it's both because Lucas brought a lot of ridicule upon himself, and like in a professional sense, I was part of that. I might have trolled him here or there as well, but I was very much one of his staunchest oppositions in the Senate, um, and even on party announcements before before EO 136-8. Um, the uh, the NPP and the SCP just went at it for each other, and the TLC deep state dossier, quote unquote dossier that he released, that, if I may be real, was just kind of a rant. I don't know. Um, I think a lot of it he brought on himself. That being said, I think people took it too far.
Forgot we were still doing this. Sorry, I zoned out for a hot second. My apologies.
Sorry, that was my bad too. I was listening, but I had stepped away for a second, so I couldn't unmute.
Sorry, guys. It's
Um,
like 1:30 in the morning. I'm tired.
so I mean, so obviously with that, so kind of segue into that. So Lucas was also a staunch supporter of the PUP, almost up until the bitter end. I mean, honestly, what were your takes about that, and just about the whole PUP thing in general? Obviously, without talking about anything that's privileged.
Yeah, and I mean, my opinion on this isn't subject to privileged information necessarily. I formed an opinion on this when I didn't have such kind of classified materials in front of me after the subpoenas. But when I looked at PUP and after the CTSA drama and all that, I was like, okay, SimDem just had a 9/11. All right, but I guess. And so we kind of rallied together. Um, but it's kind of it's inane almost to think that PUP as a party in golden consciousness, their kind of parent, um, would be so hell bent on taking down a server or trying to brigade a server that has just been trying to have fun and be political for about 6 years now. My whole take on the situation where Lucas was supporting them, frankly, their interests aligned. PUP was communist, I guess maybe in name only, but for what they were when they signed up, they were staunch communists. And Lucas was slash is communist, and they aligned. After the whole news broke, I think he had to do damage control and mitigate his opinions, but I don't fault him for that per se.
Nice, nice. Uh, on the topic of organizations that have tried to destroy the democratically elected institution of SimDem, what's your opinion on the whole Tide drama?
Oh, I think I'd get sued. Um, but anyway, well, I'm retiring, aren't I? My whole thing with Tide is I think it's just a troll. Um, Look, at the end of the day, I'm they I'm of the mind that if you have to say you're conservative to get any traction in a political scene, you're not really conservative. You're just playing off the name.
Hmm,
It's kind of like like the little adage that real wealth doesn't dress in name brands, you know, because
yeah.
real wealth shines through no matter what. Um, if for just for context, I am a conservative, and that being said, I don't say half the shit that Tide has said. Traditional values, whatever they were beforehand, it's what is traditional values necessarily? Um, you can't define that without being arbitrary in some respect, and so the premise rejects itself upon their values. So it's got to be a troll. If it's not, I would advise somebody to do an age check on the leader. I'm sorry.
That's funny.
I think it seemed to
Anyway,
be a common consensus. I mean, because you got to look at what they were doing and how they were doing it. I mean, they had to have been teenagers at best, right? I mean, we see it a lot here in SimDem, right? People join 14, 15, 16-year-old, they say some wild stuff in general, they get arrested, they get mad at us, and then they leave. I mean, it seems to be the
Hmm.
life cycle about what they've done. Obviously, these guys lasted a few days longer than some of the other ones. But I was something I talked with Tripod before earlier today was that, I mean, they popped up and they were immediately on the OHS radar. Obviously with our failed CTSA ban that we attempted a few days ago that was blocked by Alexa in the Supreme Court. But obviously today the other shoe dropped and it was just kind of undeniable. At least their alleged stance.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew it was coming, whether Alexa wants to acknowledge it or not. My personal opinion is they were doomed from the get go. Um, sorry, Alexa. Um, it's it's pretty easy, at least for me, to see that this, like, when parties are going to be reactionary just to get kind of a foothold in some people's minds, just to get some notoriety. And if your brand is built on being inflationary and just being stupid to get attention, then you're never going to be taken seriously.
Of course. So we've hit the 30-minute mark, which means this podcast episode is almost at an end. My pen, is there anything you'd like to say to the public, the citizens of SimDem, and anybody who may be watching this video?
Just vote, bro. Um, SimDem is one of those communities that really isn't replicated anywhere else. I mean, when I started the NPP with Machiavelli, Lansones, and Bonk, we were we had a 16-hour time difference between all of us. And you don't really get that anywhere else, at least in a poll sim. I would just advise you to kind of soak it all in and just talk with people from around the world and see how you can educate yourself on a whole different range of issues. I've become wiser for it, and I think you will too.
It has been a pleasure doing this episode of the podcast with you. Thank you for coming along. Thank you, Lyoko, for co-hosting with me. To all our viewers, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to see more videos on your feed. This is your host, Tripod, and y'all have a great rest of your day. Who just quacked? Now,
Sophia.
which one of you motherfuckers just quacked?
It was Sophia.
Sophia, I swear to God.
Oh no, we're gonna have to redo the episode.
Oh no. Anyways, this is your host, Tripod, and y'all have a great rest of your day or night. Bye bye.